Thank you everyone for joining us in this session, and super pleased to be introducing my colleague Donna Croucher, who you would have seen in the invite, is one of our leaders within our board practice, and she is our guru in all things non-executive director. So I really wanted her expertise for her to share her expertise with everyone here and obviously the wider members. And then at the end, we can talk about how we can sort of continue these conversations in regards to further CV writing or being introduced to other people wider across Page Exec outside of myself and Aaron. So Donna, would you like to introduce yourself and then start the presentation? And obviously everyone, because you're not on videos, if you've got any questions, if you can use a Q&A. I think if you've got questions throughout it, maybe just put it in the Q&A and then we'll have the questions and answers at the end, so Donna can sort of crack through in case your question's answered later on in her session. All right, over to you, Donna. Thank you.
That makes sense. Thanks, Catherine, and hello. Nice to be connected with you all. I can't see any faces, but hopefully, if you want some more insight afterwards, then either Catherine, Aaron, or myself can all get in touch. So I'm probably going to take about an hour of your time. The Q&A at the end, probably 10 minutes. So hopefully that's okay for everybody. So if I whiz through some areas and you want some more insight, I'm happy to share some slides with you directly afterwards. And towards the end of this presentation, there are some slides that I think are really valuable. So some hints and tips that actually are worth taking away and reflecting on. So we can send that over if you pop a note to Catherine or Aaron after this session. So I'm just going to share my screen. You might see a small child. It's my son and my screensaver. So apologies if he comes across just momentarily. Give me 2 seconds. Thank you, everybody. All right, here we go. Right. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Please put it in the chat if you can't. So as a quick introduction, and to tell you why I'm here really, I've got 25 years experience in recruitment and search. Scary, I know I don't look that old, but over the last few years, sort of 6, 7, 8 years, I've really been focusing more on board appointments. And I have spent time, and I'll come on to talk about Cranfield in a while, but I've spent time with Cranfield School of Management as part of their programme as a delegate, but then now as part of their faculty delivering their non-exec director training to delegates and people wanting to further their career in that fashion. So my background is search, but search a C-suite level and now at board level as well. And I sit as part of our board practice, and that board practice consists of a mix of functional and sector experience. And the reason we split it up like that is because our customers, when they come to us, they want people from a particular background. So we try to post them to people who have got the right networks. So for example, my background and my practices are our technology and our retail practice. So I lead technology as a function. So on the executive side, recruiting CISOs, CIOs, CTOs through my team and I. And then on the retail side, it's a sector function discipline. So that's looking at CEOs, MDs, sales directors, marketing directors, etc., across the whole retail sector. So that's where I sit. But other sectors that we have in our board practice, we cover industrial, financial services, we cover life sciences. And then from a functional perspective, we've got transformation, HR, finance, and obviously technology. So it's a broad board practice made up of the heads of each of those practices leading the way. And we've had a huge number of NED placements over the last couple of years. It's actually taken off dramatically at all levels. So starting from placing trustees into charities, we've got specialists in that area. Then we've got partners and senior partners who have placed into startup technology businesses, FTSE 250 organisations, huge international banks, you know, the whole spectrum we've covered, from a trustee, a non-exec director, senior independent directors, and chairs. So we've got a very diverse portfolio of customers and roles that we've placed into. And I think that partnership with Cranfield's really pushed that forward for us, because being part of their alumni, being part of their network, it's working well both ways. So the information that I'm about to share with you today comes from 25 years search experience, but it's actually also been approved by Cranfield School of Management, and a lot of the information around the role of the NED has come from them. So before I start, I want to be really frank and honest and say, we can help in some ways, and there's some areas that we can't help you. So how we can help. So if this is your first role, or that you're embarking on the early stage of your non-exec director journey, we can give you the advice, we can give you the support, we can give you the tools and introductions that you're going to need to embark on that early stage in your NED career. We would struggle to say, for everybody that says, I want to be a non-exec director, to get you the number of interviews that you might expect, or to get you onto every shortlist, because being honest, our customers do expect to see some experience in this area on our shortlists. So we can't always help by guaranteeing that we're going to get you a NED job because you register with us, but what we can guarantee is we can support you on that journey, and we can point you in the directions that you would need to go yourself to make sure that you're in the best position to get that. So hopefully we're going to add value today. The aims and objectives for today, there's just 3 areas I want to take you through, and as I say, there'll be a Q&A at the end, so please do put any questions into chat, and Catherine will keep a close eye on that. The first part is to talk about the difference between an exec CV and a non-exec CV. The second is advice on how to search for that NED role. Now, I'm very conscious that we've got a mix of people on this call today. We've got those early in their NED journey who haven't had their first role yet, and we've got people who've already built their portfolio. So I'm going to keep it really basic, but I'm hoping that for those who have already embarked on the journey, that you might pick up some good hints and advice in an increasingly competitive market. So some advice on how to search for it, and then how to interview, and how can you, as a NED early in your career who hasn't had a NED post yet, how can you secure that job offer over and above more experienced or portfolio NEDs? So those are the 3 key areas, and then we're going to share some advice going forward. So we're going to start with the difference between the CVs, and it's fascinating actually, because when I put this presentation together, and this is a version of what I presented to the delegates at Cranfield, the data coming out was a bit of a shock actually, because when we advertise a non-exec director or a board position online, through our website, through LinkedIn, through different search engines, almost 75% of the CVs that we get through are executive CVs. So those candidates applying for the job haven't made any effort to change their CV from their standard exec, CEO, CIO, CPO CV and change it into one that's tailored for a non-exec director role. So 3/4 of candidates haven't done that. 8% of candidates just send their LinkedIn profile. So they'll hit apply to job with my LinkedIn profile, and we get a 1-page sheet of job titles and a little bit of a summary. So actually, when you think about it, nearly 85% of the CVs that we read aren't non-exec CVs. So if you can put together even a basic non-exec CV, you're already in the upper quartile in showing an organisation, whether it's a search business like ourselves or whether you're applying directly, you're already showing them that you're serious about your non-exec director career. So I thought those stats were really high. You'd be in the upper quartile if you just put together a NED CV. Above that, it's important that you do tailor your CV for every application. There aren't going to be thousands of NED jobs in the market that are going to be suitable for you at any given time. So this might sound onerous and time consuming, but actually when you see a role online or through a search firm that you think you've got the right experience for, you need to tailor that CV. And the most important part to get right is the relevant supporting statement. And I'm just going to show this example NED CV on the right here, and it's got the professional profile part on the top of it. That professional profile or supporting statement on the vast majority of CVs that myself and my colleagues see is the same for every person. So whether you're an exec or a non-exec, it'll talk about how commercial you are, that you're a team player. It'll talk about strategic leadership, the sectors you've worked in, the size of the organizations, etc. It's the same for almost every CV. And that's not what a customer wants to see on a NED CV. So the supporting statement on a NED CV, those that land the best should talk about why should they meet you for that specific role in that organization. So you need to talk about what values, behaviors and skills would you bring that are relevant to them as a business, and why do you want to work for that organization? And that's critical. I've interviewed people that have interviewed NEDs to find out what do you like about NED CVs or chair CVs, and this is on the list every time. They want to see this, that this person wants to work for that company, not that this person just wants a NED job to put on their CV. It's very off-putting to them if they see a generic NED CV and one that could have been sent to 20 different companies. They want to see that someone's taken the time to say, okay, I align to your values and I align to your business because of these reasons, and I would bring these skills to your organization that I feel would add value to you for these reasons. So a short supporting statement tailored in that way, again, will take you from the top 15% to the top 5%. So critical that's there tailored on each CV. Then the structure, and this is a pro forma template that Catherine or Aaron can send out afterwards, but you'll see on the screen, hopefully, that it's a 2-page profile that you need to build up. 2 pages seems to be the most popular. 3 pages is fine. Any more than that, and people won't read it. They want to see the professional profile or supporting statement. They want to see the relevant experience and where you've worked. So hopefully that's useful as a starting point for those who haven't written their NED CVs yet. So I'm going to go on and talk about the similarities between the exec CV and the non-exec CV, but also there's huge differences. So let's start with the similarities. So what you'd expect to see on an exec CV or a non-exec CV is education around academics and professional memberships, of course. The professional experience part, actually, a lot of people don't get right. So some tips for the exec CV here as well, I guess. Everybody breaks down chronologically their experience of the recent organisations they've worked for and how they've what responsibility that they've taken in those organisations. But what a lot of people don't do is give context behind those businesses. So if you've worked for a consumer brand, for example, your Pepsi or Apple, etc., you could look at a CV and you can imagine perhaps how that person would have worked in that organisation. But if you don't work for a business that is well known or branded, it's critical that you explain the context behind that business. So you explain who owns that business. Is it private equity backed? Is it a family run business? Is it listed? What's the scale of the organisation? How many people does it have in it? Is it international? Is it UK? What are the revenues? What is it, a profitable growing business? giving that context will bring to life to the customer that's reading the CV just a bit more about what kind of role they can see you having played a part in the job you've done for that organisation. So you don't need to do it for every job on your CV, but certainly the last 3 or 4, give that context, because the person reading the CV will then see the link and the relevance between what you've done and the business that you're applying to. And then split the responsibilities and achievements on an exec CV and a non-exec CV exactly the same. The skills, you'll need a skills section, both on the exec and the non-exec CV, but they're going to be very different skills on the non-exec CV. And a little later, when I talk about the interviews and the evidence you need to provide, I'll talk about those skills. And as I say, we can send this over to you afterwards. So what are the differences between the 2 types of CV? These 5 areas that I've highlighted here all need to be evidenced on a non-exec CV for it to be fully rounded and for it to appeal to the majority of our customers. These 5 topics come up every time on every job description and in every interview. So my advice is, if you haven't got experience in one of these areas yet, you need to think about how you could go and get it so that you can highlight it on your CV. So board experience, if you're not sitting on a board yet, perhaps you are advising a board, perhaps you're on a shadow board, or perhaps you're working with a board on any programs or projects, but you need to reference that you're used to interacting at board level and being able to raise an opinion and advise people at that level. So that needs to be on there. Strategic leadership is a little more straightforward, but it's the way that you articulate yourself. It's the way that the language and the words that you're using in your CV on a non-exec CV, purely strategic. You need to remove all the operational aspects to the CV and talk about leadership in a strategic way. So the way I'm describing these 5 areas almost needs to be the way that they're written on the CV, and put your experience underneath them. Governance and compliance, that can be a tricky one for some who haven't had the opportunity to perhaps demonstrate good governance. And I'm going to talk a little later about perhaps starting the NED journey by looking at opportunities to be perhaps a school governor, to be a trustee for a charity on your journey. So if you haven't had strong evidence of good governance and compliance in your corporate role, it could be that you can get this elsewhere, but it does need to show that on your CV. Stakeholder management, these are the new buzzwords. I think stakeholder management, regardless of the function or sector you work in, every customer wants to see that there's good stakeholder management. And again, it may be obvious, but you need to evidence it on the CV. And then independence and objectivity. This is an area that's very different, I think, because it'll perhaps involve some thinking and some digging into where have you shown objective thinking and where have you shown sound independent judgment. Really important, because these are the skills that they're looking for in a good NED, so they'll want to see that you've evidenced them. So just, I've put a couple of bullet points here. You need to showcase your ability to provide that effective oversight and contribute to the strategic decision making, bringing value to that organisation. So going back to that supporting statement that I spoke about, how are you going to pull through how you've added value to your existing company or a past company, and how's that going to help the organisation that you're applying to? Right, so how you've created your NED CV, and as I said, I'm going to come on with some more pointers shortly, but where do you go with that CV once you've created it? Where should you start looking? Now, I'm going to talk about LinkedIn for a few minutes, and I'm sure pretty much everybody on this call is probably on LinkedIn, but there's probably some aspects to your profile that you might need to tailor. So on LinkedIn, you need to showcase, if you're not already a non-exec director, that you are interested in being a non-exec director. So list yourself as open to non-exec director roles and list the work that you've already done, so the experience you already have in charities or as a governor or as a trustee. This is really important because whereas I'm going to talk about the proactive work you're going to do in a minute, if you get this right on your LinkedIn, this profile will do the work for you behind the scenes while you're carrying on with your day job. So to give you an example, we've got 10 people in our research function at Page Executive in the UK. And when I am asked to run a search for a non-exec director role, the first thing I do is speak to my research partner, get her on a call with my customer, and we talk about the kind of profile that we're looking for in that individual. She will then look, of course, at our Salesforce database, Dun & Bradstreet, LinkedIn. She will look externally to map out who could fit that profile in the market to create a long list. If she looked on LinkedIn as it stands, she could probably get between 1,000 and 3,000 non-exec directors that have got non-exec director experience. So if you want to be on that list, she's looking for keywords. She's looking for those words we've mentioned already around governance and compliance. She's looking for that board level experience. But if you haven't got NED written on your CV, you're not going to come up high enough in that list. So if you're saying, I'm open to a NED role, I've been in a governor role, I've been in a trustee role, you will end up higher up her search, especially if you're labeling yourself as open to NED roles. And our research function can't phone 3,000 people. They can perhaps contact 100. So actually, if you want to be in that 100, it's really important that even if you haven't got a NED role yet, that you talk about wanting one on that profile, so the words come up in those keyword searches and you get that first contact. Websites, dynamic boards, new roles, search firms' websites, all traditional and obvious places to look for NED appointments. But actually, when we did a survey recently and asked existing non-exec directors how they went about finding their first role, it was all through their own network and it was all through introductions. So connecting with your network, I'd say, is the most critical aspect of your journey. Talking to existing NEDs about where it's worked for them, they were talking to me about the fact that they connect with their past CEOs, their past chairmen, their past NEDs from their previous roles, and ask them things like, do you think I'd make a good NED? I've just started my non-exec director search. Have you got any advice for me? So going to them almost as in a mentor type way to ask, do you think this is a path I should take? And the way that that's benefited a lot of our network is because those people who are existing non-exec directors will get approached about other roles regularly, and you want to hear about those. So you want them to almost be out there representing you in the market. So when they hear of non-exec director roles, they're saying, I might not be interested, but speak to Catherine. I know that she's open to this sort of opportunity. So you need to almost be brave and go back to all your past network. Oh, I'm so sorry. This is my child again. I'm very sorry about this. Give me 2 seconds. Here we go. Go back to your past network and ask them for advice, for their opinion, and do that as many times as you can, so you've got all those other people out in the market bringing you information and giving you guidance as to that first role. Short case study, because I'm conscious of time today, but I wanted to share some advice that our chair, Angela Seymour Jackson, has shared with a number of our customers. She was one of our non-exec directors. She's now chair and one of the few female FTSE PLC chairs. She started out as the CEO. I shouldn't start out. She was the CEO of the RAC when she wanted to start her NED journey. She was registered, I think, with every search firm she thought could provide her a NED role. She was networking, telling people in the market this is what she wanted to do. And she said that she had 10 interviews and got turned down for every single one of them. And she's fantastic. She comes across brilliantly in person, you know, CEO of the RAC. She's gonna have some good strategic leadership experience, but she got turned down over and over and over. And at the time, she'd just been through a big transformation at the RAC. They'd completely overhauled their business processes, their organisation design. They changed an awful lot in terms of the way that they worked at the RAC, and it was a very long project. And a contact of hers, who was then the CEO of Rentokil Initial, was about to embark on a very similar journey. So he reached out to her and said, I'd really appreciate your advice and some insight from your board as to how your journey went in this business transformation. And Angela, very time short, had a young family, didn't really have the capacity to be able to support Rentokil and give that advice, but thought, you know, it's always important to be generous with your time. So she got a group of her board together, and her and the board met on a regular basis with Rentokil to support them in planning their transformation for their organisation. And it landed so well that actually the board at Rentokil Initial invited Angela to be a non-exec director on their board. And she would never have got that role if she hadn't had those connections and she wasn't engaging with them and supporting them, because she'd have been one CV without experience on a short list of people who had it. So her advice is always be generous with your time. So those past colleagues, the people you've worked with, be generous, support them, and that first role will come from something that perhaps is the least likely route. And after that, I think it was only weeks before she got her second non-exec director role, and has built it. And then she was able to step back from her CEO role and become a portfolio non-exec. So I wanted to share that with you because it's a good example of how you need that network, and you need to be generous with your time when you support them. So how are you going to interview to secure a non-exec director role over and above those who are already NEDs? So again, apologies to those who are already NEDs on this call, but I think the tips and the insight here will probably be useful for future reference for you as well. So this is the interview process that we see on the majority of the processes that we run. So they're not in every process, and this is perhaps more designed for a corporate process rather than a not-for-profit process. But I think it's really important to understand, because we've seen a lot of people get rejected after these meetings because they weren't prepared for them. So in the majority of cases, the first step in the process will be a coffee chat, and they'll say, come for an informal, casual coffee chat. We'll sit and have a conversation and get to know each other. It's never informal or casual. The venue might be, but actually it's still part of the interview process. And it's really important that you're prepared for that, as you would be prepared for an interview. But the tone and the location will be more casual, but the answers that you give and the way that you present yourself will determine whether you get onto the next stage. So it's not as casual as they will make out. You're likely to be asked whether you want to attend a pre-interview visit before your formal interview. And typically, you know, for the clients that I've worked with in retail, they've taken them around head offices, they've taken people around stores. You know, it's been more informal again, but it's the conversation that goes on while you're experiencing the site or meeting the people around the business. That is part of the process. So it's almost stage 2 before you get to the structured competency-based interview. And I've got some examples of what those interviews look like, which we're going to go on to, but we're seeing more and more case studies being presented at the moment. And the case studies tend to be around things like when there's a challenge in a business, how would you react? How would you challenge somebody else on the board if you don't agree with their decision making, etc. They'll want to see how you would perform in the role through the case study, and that's relatively new. We're seeing these in the majority of processes now, and that hasn't been the case previously. And there's always a panel interview with the board, and in that panel interview, it'll show them actually what would a board meeting look like in reality. So what would the interaction be like? What's the chemistry like? Does this person fit with the flow of conversation in this group? So the interview process needs to be really well thought out from a preparation perspective, because there's a lot of different ways that you'll need to evidence your values, your behaviors, your skills and your experience, without using the same experience to evidence over and over again, which is what I'm about to come on to. So in these meetings, you need to do two things. Across all 5 of these different stages, you need to highlight personal attributes that need to exist for a good non-exec director. So you need to evidence integrity. How do you hold yourself to the highest of ethical standards? So you'll need examples for how have you shown that integrity in past roles. Strong leadership skills, perhaps you'll have more examples of this, but again, it's the strategic leadership rather than operational. Being inquisitive and a good listener. It's crazy the number of people that we get rejected because they were talking more than they're listening. And I think I've been saying this for about 25 years now, from when I was recruiting part qualified accountants in 1998 through till now. It's really important as a non-exec that you're quiet for most of the conversation, and then you've got very thought-provoking questions or remarks. So that listening balance will be tested at the meeting. Critical thinking and excellent judgment. Where did you demonstrate that last? You'll need that example. Mentioned it earlier, being independently minded and decisive. Where have you got evidence of this? And then strong business acumen, being numerical and data savvy. This is more and more important as the role of the NED evolves. So if you're in a functional role where you're not close to numbers, have a think about how you can demonstrate that you understand how to read a P&L and what you're looking for in a balance sheet, and that you can look at a set of accounts and actually question them. So perhaps get yourself on an accountancy course. I know that the Big Four have been doing very short accountancy courses for non-exec directors, but your current organisation might be able to provide some support in this. So it's not just about the finance part, but it's about the technology as well, and being data savvy. So do you understand how businesses organise data? Do you understand how they can commercialise data, perhaps? So having that strong business acumen, if you're missing parts of it, think about how you can get it, because they'll want you to have that breadth of experience in your NED role. So examples for all of those in terms of your personal attributes, but in terms of your experience, you'll also need to evidence. And I've put 4 areas here, but there's an awful lot more. But I think these are the themes that come up regularly. So it's that high level of understanding and exposure to influencing at board level. So when have you done that? And, again, thinking about what was the effect of it, what was the outcome of it, but you'll need to show that you've got that influencing skills. Experience in managing risk and governance, regardless of your industry or function. So again, having a think about, have you got that in your corporate career, or can you get that through a trustee or a governor role? Specialist knowledge of sector experience that's relevant. So coming back to the beginning of our talk, when I mentioned about how we set up our board practice, My area of expertise is technology, so the customers will come to me because they want somebody who's got a functional technology background. So if I'm talking to a candidate, that's almost given, right? They've got that functional technology background, and that's why I'm talking to them. So think about why that organisation might need your background. What could you offer them in terms of the skills and the experience that you've had that's really relevant to that organisation, because they've asked for it. But so how can you highlight the relevant examples over and above others who have got a similar background? And then lastly, evidence of you holding the shared values of the company that you're interviewing for. And this is really important, especially with that board dynamic. And most businesses of a certain size will have some sort of value statement or mission statement on their website, but perhaps doing more research than that. So perhaps looking on LinkedIn and seeing who am I connected to, who's working in that organisation, and reach out to them directly and say, I'm talking to your organisation about a role. Be really keen to find out what are the themes around values and behaviours that are really important to your organisation at the moment, showing that proactive approach. And making sure for yourself as well that you're aligned, because actually if the values and behaviours don't align with your beliefs, you don't want to go and work there anyway. So make sure that you're doing that research to evidence why you're relevant if you want to go ahead for it. Preparation. There's a lot of preparation, and I'm going to click through these now so that you can see them on the slides. And I can send you this if that's helpful. Because there are a limited number of non-exec director roles that are going to be relevant for you and that you're going to be interested in, it's really important that you spend the time making sure that you've covered every aspect on this list, because it's a waste of your journey, of you tailoring your CV, of you organising your time to attend the interviews if you can't demonstrate all of these things, because it's less likely that you'll secure the role. So if you're not doing it already, make sure that you're researching the company via Companies House, etc., and you're reviewing the accounts, ordering the company documents, do your due diligence around where they're at financially, and be confident that you can perhaps ask some questions in those areas. Make sure that you understand the values and the mission statement on their website. As I said, that will get asked or it will get looked for in the interview. So it's important that you've looked in advance. Speak to customers and get to know the product or service. And this applies actually for exec roles and non-exec roles. For exec roles, I've got a search I'm running at the moment for a huge construction business. And the people that are at second interview stage are going to their sites and they're looking to see, they're talking to the people that work in the organisation to find out, from the people that are there, how, what is it like to work for the organisation, what are the challenges of the organisation, but actually they're talking to the organisations that are buying from that business, and to make sure that actually as a provider, how is that business to work with. So speaking to customers, consumers and existing staff, really important and will set you apart. Use LinkedIn to learn more about the existing board and their background. Have a look at, are the other NEDs? Is the chair listed? Where have they come from? Have you worked for similar organisations? Have you got people in common? And as I say, review your network to see if you're already connected with anybody in the organisation. Asking for board dates for the appointment is really important, and this has caused challenges in the past where CEOs, let's say, have applied for non-exec director roles, been offered the role, and then seen that the board dates that are in their NED role clash with the board dates for their CEO role, and they're not able to accept the job. So at the beginning of any process, you should be able to ask for the board dates. They're normally set in advance to make sure they're not going to be at the same time as your existing exec board meetings. Preempt any potential challenges and plan the responses for the specific interview questions. So if you think you're missing anything or there's any gaps, make sure you're covering that. Then look at your elevator pitch, and this is probably taking you back a few years, but you know, when someone says, or tell me about Catherine, what are you going to say? Because this can catch a lot of people out, especially when you're meeting people for a very short period of time as part of that initial introduction. So really important that you practice your elevator pitch and your USPs, your personal USPs. And if you really want to go for it, complete a mock interview and record your responses to see how you deliver those responses and to change perhaps the way that you structure your sentences. Example interview questions. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to send them on through Catherine and Aaron so that you can read them up. And if you get a non-exec director interview, especially through Page Executive, you're ready with these answers, because these have actually come from previous interview questions that either our clients have asked our candidates or we've asked the candidates when we're doing that first stage in the process. So some of them might be obvious, but if you haven't got answers to them, then you're going to be at risk of not performing as well as perhaps you could have in the meeting. So I think I'm all right for time. I've got a few more minutes. Advice moving forward. If this is a route that you want to pursue, it's one that is important to get right from the beginning, because the CV, the way that you are connecting with your network and the way that you're preparing for the interview, it's worth investing the time in every aspect of that, because with the limited opportunities, you want to make sure you're as prepared as you can be. So get your CV to stand out. That's easily done. You'll be in the top 15% if you just write a basic NED CV, but then reach out to Catherine and Aaron and they can put you in touch with our board practice and we'll triage it. So if you want us to have a look at it and perhaps fine tune it, we're happy to do that. We won't write it for you. I wish we could. But we will triage it to make sure that it's fit for what you want it to look like. Reach out to that network after this call. Hopefully I've given you some good ideas. Just do it straight away. Go to your network and tell them that you're looking for board opportunities and see whether they can make any recommendations. Get your examples ready for an interview, do your due diligence and make sure that you fully understand the commitment required and that the board meetings don't clash. So that commitment required piece is interesting because I've had a recent NED search where the client said, oh, it's a meeting a month, online, and then every quarter is a face-to-face, so we're normally just 9 to 5, it's no longer than that. But of course, it's a day of preparation for that meeting in addition to that meeting, and actually in that instance they were going through some challenges as an organisation, and they were really reaching out to their non-exec directors to support them with that. So actually what was on the face of it 1 day a month turned out to be probably 3 or 4 days a month. And if you've got a demanding C-suite role or leadership role, think about whether you can balance the two in conjunction with each other. And enjoy the process on the role, because it can be really stressful to go through this process, but we're here to support it. There's a lot of tools out in the market. There's webinars on our website. Angela Seymour Jackson's is linked there. We've got consultancies that we partner with. We've got advice that we can share with you. So don't think, oh, I don't know how to go about this. Reach out to Catherine, Aaron or myself, and we're happy to help you on that journey. The last thing to mention, if you haven't got it already, after my time at Cranfield, I wrote a guide on how to become a non-exec director. Again, suitable for those that are embarking on the journey rather than those that perhaps have got a portfolio already. But it just covers more of the responsibilities and obligations of being a NED, and then the interview process after that. So it gives you more information, and we can happily send that over to you if it's of use after this. So I think I've been okay with the time, Catherine. Am I all right? So I keep looking at the clock.
You're absolutely spot on. Thank you so much for that, Donna. That was, that was really, really insightful. And thank you. I actually learned things that I thought I knew. So that's really great for us actually as a recruiter side to impart information onto our, our network. So far, I've just got one question from Fahana. I'm not sure exactly which page this is. The question is, would the bullet form the section titles in the CV itself, or blend it into the experience, education, and skills sections?
So I think it probably relates to the 5 bullet points that I talked about when putting a CV together. So I think mentioning that in the skills is important. So make sure that those are on as your skills if you've got them in bullet point form. But when you talk about your responsibilities or your achievements, highlight the evidence behind it as well, because that will form the questioning at interview, because it's about the reader not having any question marks as to whether you've had experience in all the areas that we need to see. So if you're highlighting it as a skill, brilliant. Even better if you can evidence exactly what board experience or exactly what strategic leadership you've had, how you've done it, etc., in the responsibilities part of your CV. So this CV isn't going to hold as much information as your executive CV. It'll be lighter because we're just talking about the work that's relevant to the NED. So we've got more scope to be able to elaborate on this as opposed to the exec CV.
And if I can ask a question actually about the cover letter. So even as a recruiter, sometimes it can be confusing, and especially in today's world where people are very time poor. Are cover letters to be detailed? Are you meant to, you know, emotionally say, I'm very interested in this role, and, you know, how forward are you with your interest? And do you end up mirroring some of what's in the CV, or do you try to add something different in the cover letter compared to the CV? I'm not sure how much detail you expect.
So if you're looking for a trustee role within a charity, they often say they're more than likely to say they want a full covering letter. So that will be a piece of paper or a slide separate to the actual CV, and that needs to show all the relevant experience, all the evidence, and then a passionate plea as to why you'd be an amazing fit for their charity, let's say, connecting what you would bring to what that organisation stands for. So looking at the themes, looking at the values on their website, and highlighting that, you know, where you've got those from and what you would bring. So pretty much every trustee role that there should be a one-pager covering letter. For your, let's say FTSE 250, let's say corporate NED role, it's just having that supporting statement at the top of the CV that's tailored. So that supporting statement should say, this is the reason why I would like to be a non-exec director for Page Group, and these are the values and behaviours that are aligned, and these are the skills and experience that I would bring that I feel would benefit you in this way. So it's being specific but more punchy on the corporate CV. So it's less of a covering letter or note. It's more of an alignment of this person's way of working and their experience to what they feel that organisation would need. It shows that they've put thought to it rather than it being a CV that's just thrown out to a number of organisations.
And I've got a question that's come through about how attractive is trustee experience to private sector NED roles, or are they seen as irrelevant?
It's not seen as irrelevant. It's not as attractive as another NED role. So I'm going to be honest and say that, right? It's not as, but it's particularly attractive if somebody's very passionate about the trustee work they've done. So, for example, a colleague of mine has recently been appointed to a charity, so as a trustee, on a charity called George's Rockstars. And George's Rockstars are a music therapy charity for children who have got cancer. And her background, my colleague's background, is she's a classically trained musician, and she's been impacted by youth illness in this way in her family. So she's completely aligned to this charity, both in her background and her family, and actually, her degree in classical music. So she was such a natural fit to them that she then is going above and beyond in her role as a NED there. So as a trustee there, sorry. So now that she's looking for NED roles, she's getting the interviews because her CV is tailored in the way that we've just spoken about, and she's using the right experience. But she can pull that compliance, that governance experience, she can pull that board experience from that trustee role to bulk up the CV. But she talks with such passion about the work she's done there. The organisations are looking at her really favourably because they want someone that can be equally passionate about the work they're doing. So it's not that it's almost a tick box, oh, I've been a trustee, so now I can be a NED. Look at the sort of trustee work that you'd be doing, because if you're not totally aligned to that charity, it's a lot of investment and a lot of time, often pro bono, and if it doesn't have a natural connection to what you're going to do as a NED, is it worth doing it if you've already got that experience? If you can't take all those 5 things that I mentioned earlier, do it because it gives you more examples. But if you can tick them already, then it could be a big investment of time when you add a NED job on top of that trustee role and your exec role. That's a lot. So it's just worth bearing that in mind.
Great, thank you. So some more questions coming through. So is it beneficial for potential non-exec directors to pursue a certificate in finance, or is this dependent on the specific role?
I think it's dependent on the person, because I've never been asked, and I don't think my colleagues have been asked, and certainly Cranfield didn't say that you need any sort of certification. But what you do need is that strong numerical mind and somebody that can read a P&L. So if you've shown in your experience that you've done that and you can do that, it shouldn't matter. But if you haven't, for example, I hope you don't mind me saying, Catherine, but I spoke to a few people in HR that perhaps haven't been as close to the numbers side of things, and they've gone to the Big Four and they've sat one of those, I think it's 3 or 4 day courses, to be able to add that to their CV. So again, it's just removing any questions on the CV and giving the evidence and showing them, look, I am completely rounded.
Yeah. How much detail is required regarding your functional background? So, for example, type of projects you've led or the type of technologies you were involved in?
On the functional side, it's interesting actually, because I'm going to go back a little bit on what I said earlier. It's worth speaking to a recruiter in a business or somebody in the search firm like ourselves and finding out some more information about the priorities of that business. What transformation are they about to go through? What's the direction of travel for the technology in that organization? Because if they've asked, for example, me to look for someone from a functional technology background, then you need that information to be able to present it correctly on that CV. So with the functional roles, I'd say hold off tailoring your CV until you can get that information around the challenges in that organisation. And then we or any other search partner will help you with the themes and showcase that in the right way on the CV. So because one size is never going to fit all, because different organisations are looking for people to work with technology in different ways.
Great, no, thank you. Someone's actually put down, this has been really thorough and valuable session, so thank you so much. However, NED roles don't necessarily follow this really good structure that you've shared with us. Obviously, things don't always go in the way that you would like, particularly in the interview itself. So this lady said, how do you suggest this is managed if people are trying to really plan, but then it's more sort of free-flowing? Any hints or tips about that?
I think, you're absolutely right. This is best practice. These are themes, and this is, if you're going to prepare, this is what you should prepare. And you're right, they never go as perfectly as this. But I think if you go into a NED interview and you've prepared in this way, if it's a free-flowing conversation and you don't need all those examples, then hopefully you'll go in a little bit more confident, because I think that preparation will give you that confidence. But if it is free-flowing, I just say at the back of your mind, remember what I said about the coffee chat, because sometimes people are very casual interviewers, but they're looking for the same experience, but they're not looking for textbook answers. So it's how then, with your style, can you still get across all of these examples, but in a way that's perhaps less formal or more free-flowing, because people get caught out by that kind of, by that off-piste or casual style, I find. But I think it's all about the preparation will give you the confidence going in. So regardless of the style of the interviewer, you're ready for it, and it's not going to be a no because you haven't prepared. That's my thoughts on it.
And I suppose, as well as with everything, it's, you know, people who may be high introverts as well can get a little bit anxious whether or not they're going to put their best foot forward. So again, the whole planning piece is so essential. Right, we've got 2 minutes left. What I'm getting is just a lot of thank yous, which is wonderful. Great session, very well structured, really clear. Yeah, I've got to say it's fantastic. So as Donna mentioned, Aaron and I will send through the details that she shared, the questions, the pack, I think it was that you've mentioned already that you've created. And if anyone's got any specific questions, please reach out to myself and Aaron, and then we can obviously funnel this through to Donna. But I think if no one's got any final questions, I don't know if Donna, if you've got any sort of last minute hints or tips or anything that you could share with the group.
No, I mean, I think I've covered most, but, you know, if anybody's got a specific question and they want to ask it, you know, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to pop me a note on LinkedIn. Happy to help. And as I say, I can forward as many of these slides as you want and the pack over to Catherine and Aaron. So hopefully this will have helped in even if it's just thinking about one or two different ways of looking at this process.
Yeah, I did have one final question here, got 3 tips, but obviously we're running out of time, so we can I can share that. If you have any 3 tips you think about, I can share that with everyone later on. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I know that everyone's time is very precious at the moment. And Donna, thank you so much. And we look forward to all of us staying in touch with you. But also as well, actually, final point I should say, I know that Donna was very transparent in her honesty at the beginning about the fact that we can't guarantee everyone's going to get a non-executive director role. But we do have a moment in time in which a lot of our clients are actually looking for real diversity at the board level as well. So there are some clients where they are more willing to look at people to get their first non-executive director role. So again, when we get any roles like that specifically, we'll be sharing them directly to the group. And hopefully everyone's seen the role that we had with Bernardo's that we shared for a trustee role. And I know some people have applied for that. They just need an accountancy background. So anything that we get through from the wider group, we will share through to this group, but we can obviously introduce you individually to the relevant practice area. Thank you, everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody, for your time.